Hi, and doctoral student Alicia Dukov, who is joining Dr. Jenkins here today, MD. We're going to have a really fun show this afternoon because we're going to be talking about personality disorders and whether or not we know if we've dated people with those disorders. They're very subtle. They're really underneath the surface. They're very hard to detect. But when you know the criteria for some of these personality disorders, it's either going to make you laugh or cry to realize that you may have dated or you are still in a relationship with somebody who may have these disorders. So fun show today. Here's Dr. Jenkins.
I can't wait to find out if I've ever dated anybody that is a compulsive disorder person. I don't think so. How about if your spouse, girlfriend, boyfriend clean too much? Is that a disorder?
Well, it could be. That's the thing. So OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, which has since been, the name of that's been changed in the new DSM without getting too technical. It's created its own chapter now in the new DSM because it has so many subtle little cues that you can recognize if you know what you're looking for. OCD is like mainly control-based. It's this insecurity about being out of control. And so these kind of behaviors that manifest out of it are like, anything that makes somebody feel anxious in the moment, they're going to have these little behaviors that you'll notice, like hand washing, some kind of compulsion that they have to do in order to feel like they are in control of the situation.
How about like bedwetting? Is that one?
I don't know. That would be probably more on your side, I would think. Okay. The medical side. So what is bedwetting then?
Well, I don't know for sure, but some people wet the bed. Some people wet the bed during intercourse. But I don't know if that's a DSM thing or that's a medical thing.
Well, and you had a caller a little while back on one of our shows about squirting, the concept of squirting. The technical side of that, she called to see if that was normal or if she was actually peeing, right?
Right.
So that's what you would be referring to with bedwetting during intercourse?
It's more medical, probably. More medical, not so much psychological.
Okay. All right. So do you think you've ever dated anybody with a personality disorder, Dr. Jenkins?
Absolutely not. But on this station, with the three of us in the room, I think we all have some kind of disorder.
That is so true. So, okay, let me explain. When you're actually diagnosed with a personality disorder, which is very hard to detect, as I said, you have to be in a therapeutic environment, the person, observing you and giving you the psychiatric tests. It's not just, 1, 2, 3, go. You have to be seeing somebody for quite a while. And for them to really recognize whether or not this is one of those under the surface kind of disorders. But we all have it in some way, and then to be actually diagnosed with a disorder, you have to meet criteria.
Okay.
And that's what the DSM...
A check-off list, then.
Yes, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. No.
Not check-off, but check-off,
check
OFF.
Off, and not check-off like the playwright. So if you hit some of these criteria, oftentimes in some of the diagnosis, it's like if you have 5 out of these 9, then you can be diagnosed with this. The main players I want to hit today, which a lot of us have some level of inside of us, or we've definitely dated somebody with these, or have somebody in our life with these, are narcissistic personality disorder, borderline personality disorder. OCD definitely has its place in our society as far as we feel out of control, and so we're going to have these compulsions that we manifest in order to feel like our obsession with that anxiety feeling inside of us that comes up when we feel out of control will cause us to be washing our hands 100 times a day or switching lights on and off, or and it manifests in so many ways. But borderline and narcissistic, there's another one called histrionic. These are present in people. So I'm just going to have some fun.
Histrionic comes from the word hyster.
Hyster? What's that?
Like a female has a hysterectomy. Oh, okay. So they used to, in the old days, in the 20s, they used to say that a woman is histrionic, meaning that she's menopausal.
Is that where hysterical comes from as well?
Yeah, exactly. And the poor thing is the women get stuck with it.
Well, of course. Yeah. So if you're a woman listening in right now between the ages of like maybe 18 and 45, I'd say, which is when histrionic and also borderline are mainly present, mainly in women. So you're right about that. Mainly women get borderline and also histrionic, then you might be sitting here thinking to yourself, oh God, there's an actual diagnosable reason why I'm crazy.
Write it down. Tell my insurance company.
Yeah, and I think it's because women are just very highly involved with their emotions. We're very in tune with our feelings, and if you're empathetic, if you're sensitive to your environment, people will, really rock our boats. And perhaps that's like a more permeating reason why underneath the surface we have these disorders.
Could be.
Here is the checklist for narcissistic.
That looks like a long one.
Okay. Well, no, I'm just going to give the highlights. So the DSM criteria for narcissistic personality disorder, see if you've ever dated anybody with these. Having an exaggerated sense of self-importance.
No.
The other thing is you might be diagnosing yourself by the end of the show.
Geez.
That's what happens to all doctoral students.
Thank you, doctor, for the therapy.
Right? Oh, see, you're in my lair at the moment. I've got you under my control as the OCDist that I am. Expecting to be recognized as superior, even without achievements that warrant it. Exaggerating your achievements and talents. Being preoccupied with fantasies about success, power, brilliance, beauty, or the perfect mate. I mean, I once knew somebody that only talked about wanting to, build this empire, and it was they used the word empire. It's a beautiful thing on one side, because then you're looking at it going, wow, you really believe in yourself, and that's so awesome that you have such big goals. But when they become preoccupied with it, and the entire world revolves around the lens with which they look at it as only through their perspective, and they're not letting anything else in the environment, that may be a narcissist. So a lot of men, more than women, seem to present with these symptoms. Because
men are empire builders, you're right.
Oh, I don't know what century you're talking about. I know some women that are running empires right now.
That's true.
So, I mean, the thing is, a lot of ego is involved with all human beings, and it's our ability to temper that ego and learn about the subconscious and unconscious drives in us that we can manifest our behaviors in this life with some kind of connection between the drives underneath that pulls at our ego. We want to be important, we want to be successful, we want to be recognized. Right. And then be able to live in this world not as a narcissist, but as somebody who really can own themselves and be balanced in this part of them.
I know exactly what you're talking about now.
Okay, why?
I feel like I'm that person.
Okay, tell me.
I think I'm successful, but I'm not narcissistic about it.
Well, and I think, were you ever at any point in your life somebody that had a big ego that was in trouble of causing him pain in his life?
No, you've known me for 15 to 20 years.
Yeah, you're a pretty even-keeled guy.
I'm pretty even-keeled, yeah.
Yeah, and you enjoy yourself, so maybe you're not a narcissist.
I don't think so.
I don't think you fall into the narcissistic. But there's a sense of entitlement that comes along with being a narcissist as well. So oftentimes in my office, I see couples where one of them will be coming in to just complain about wanting a better relationship, and they bring in their other partner, and oftentimes that partner is suffering from some kind of pervasive personality issue.
What do you do if you wake up in the morning? What if you do wake up in the morning and your partner is next to you, and all of a sudden you think, well, something's wrong with this person. There's something wrong. It's whether they're narcissistic, OCD, depressed, anxious. How do we talk to them about that?
Well, first of all, you just mixed in a mental disorder that used to be called Axis 1 disorders with depression and anxiety.
Like 311.1?
Yeah, you remember the codes. Yeah, without getting technical, a mental disorder is a different ball of wax, because if you're dealing with depression or anxiety, those are actually diagnosable. They're actually treatable, either with a combination of medication and treatment or just treatment. But personality disorders, those are just their own fun, maddening, crazy ball of wax, because you don't really know how to detect it. And even when they're in treatment, it's very hard to treat. I mean, they're incurable because they're personality driven. They're not mental, neurological problems. Yes, of course, it changes the brain chemistry in some way, but they sit inside somebody's personality. So on a very deep level, it's just a part of them, and you have to either learn how to combat the storms that come from that or run for the hills. Get to safe land.
I imagine some people do both.
Yeah, well, I do think borderlines particularly have a very hard time keeping relationships. So I'm going to go into that. Which one?
Borderline.
Borderline, yeah.
That's the one.
Maybe.
I didn't listen to the words on that. Is that what they're talking about?
I've never actually heard the words on that. I mean, I don't really pay attention.
I remember the chorus, but I don't remember anything else about it.
I think, well okay, that's good. That's an actually good way to go, because if she's talking about being borderline on something, that's really where the concept of the name of that disorder comes from. Borderline, they're really on the edge of themselves. And where that disorder comes from is this deep feeling of a sense of abandonment. They have this real fear of abandonment, often generated from a childhood where they were neglected, a childhood where they had some sense that they weren't going to be taken care of or weren't loved properly. So how that manifests in their adult life is they go quote unquote crazy trying to get you to be in their life, really close quarters. They want your attention all the time, and it just the slightest shift in your attention from them is going to trigger all these feelings of a sense of abandonment. And so oftentimes their behaviors are motivated by making sure that you are there, that you are not leaving, and this total insecurity of you going away is what generally drives people away from these borderlines. They'll have these suicide attempts, they'll threaten suicide a lot and not really do much about it, because really what they want is just your attention. And it's a very shaky sense of self inside. When we talk about the personality disorders, you really want to look at it like a garden. They exist underneath the surface, these disorders, very subtly, but they're killing the garden with all these weeds.
So that's the ones that, the borderlines are the ones that ruin romance better, more, you think?
I think borderlines have a very hard time keeping relationships.
Yeah, I wonder what the stats are and how many are long-term.
Well, I mean,
how long they stay married, those kind of people.
I don't know how many of them actually get married even.
Oh, right.
So this is, again...
Because one is worried about really, germs and stuff.
No, that would be OCD.
Okay. Sexual
the
germs.
Germaphobes.
Sexual germs.
Those are the germaphobes.
Okay.
That would fall under the obsessive compulsive. I mean, look, as human beings, we all know people that have these traits, but unless they're really hitting all the criteria, they're not really diagnosable. But it's fun to have the conversations, because the more aware you are of the fact that there could be an actual diagnosable.
Right. That's why I'm sitting here being the fool. That's why I'm to make this looks really good for you.
No, but you know what? You're a human being. You've got to have some relationship with somebody once that was like, if you didn't call every few hours, they didn't know where you were. And they have this fear of you leaving them. That would be maybe borderline tendency. And then they'd have to be in for an evaluation to be diagnosed with it. But everything that we do in life is stemming from, we're motivated by deeper rooted issues, usually from our childhood. And it's usually about a sense of fear of abandonment, fear of rejection, which goes with that. It comes down to self-worth. If people don't feel worthy inside them, that comes from childhood.
Right.
So I'm sure that when you see people in your office for medical issues, the ones who present with anxiety or depression, perhaps, like the deeper rooted feelings underneath that may need to be evaluated by a mental health professional.
Well, I had an interesting patient this morning, and she's a 22-year-old woman, and she has a disorder. She has a disorder, and she's always anxious and worried because she may not make enough money at her job to cover all of her expenses, because she has horses and cows and things like that. And guess what her job is?
What's her job?
She has a camera, a video cam service, where people call in and says, I'll give you $400 to do this on the computer.
Oh, like of sexual nature?
Exactly.
Oh, I've heard things like that. Yeah.
And so she's worried that she's not going to get enough of those.
Enough men calling saying, can you please oink like a pig?
Because I think this woman was more gay than straight.
Okay.
Yeah, so she gets up. I go, wow, I never even thought about that. People do that. I forgot about that.
They do.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a whole world out there.
She's worried that she's not going to have money to pay for the hay and all that stuff.
Well, certainly, real world issues come along with, trying to pay your bills, regardless of what you're doing for them. But yes, I've definitely heard there are those services where, privately commissioned, mainly women out there, will be hired to do something like they do Skype calls, and they'll order the person paying for their services to get dressed like a pig and get on all fours and oink, and it turns that person on. So yeah,
is that borderline?
No, we're jumping over to sex therapy
I want to make sure I get this straight, because I don't have one chance.
We're jumping over to the fetishes at the moment, Dr. Jenkins.
Okay.
It depends on the show you want.
My personal thing that happened to me today. I go, wow, I never thought about people being anxious about not making enough money in the porn business.
Wow. Well, you should have her call in. And speaking of calling in, if you guys are interested in giving us a call and talking about maybe somebody that you've dated with one of the personality disorders, if you think they may have had them, the number here is 661-298-5487. That's 298-KHTS. And it's just interesting. Like, we don't think of a bad relationship or a relationship that's driving us crazy as something way more pervasive and permeating under the surface in them or in us. As a doctoral student, I diagnosed myself at least 50 times by now, going through the criteria.
Did you have a spinal tap or anything like that?
No.
I had a colleague in med school, and she was so sure she had meningitis, she demanded a spinal tap. It's
like part of being in doctoral studies,
I think
right?
She said, I know I have a meningitis. I want the spinal tap right now. Of course, she had it done. It was normal.
Yeah, you get this paranoia, like you're reading all the criteria and you're like, wow. And then what's really fun, especially on the personality disorder side, when you're reading the criteria, is you think about all the people in your life that are close to you that may have these disorders. Why this is important is because whether or not it's diagnosable, whether or not they meet all the criteria, you can see in black and white that there's a reason why they're driving you insane. There's a reason why you yourself may be feeling really insecure, and it helps you gain perspective and awareness on a deeper level so that you can understand yourself and people around you. I mean, this is only going to benefit you to know about what narcissistic personality disorder is, to know what borderline is.
Are those couples that need to have treatment, or are those people that just need to not worry so much?
What do you mean?
Well, not worry so much. Like even though my boyfriend's an OCD, I love him anyway, and he can clean all he wants.
Well, usually that comes with a place of balance that can be achieved when you've worked with the disorder, when you know what it is. But if your husband or wife, let's say, has OCD and you don't even know what OCD is, you just know that every day you go to the kitchen, get the milk out, and he's already cleaning your bowl of cereal before you've eaten it, you wouldn't know that that's maybe a diagnosable thing called OCD. He's just driving you crazy. So you'd want to be able to get to a point where you can balance out your understanding of it, and he's in treatment for it, and then you guys come to a happy medium about how to coexist without him going irate over every little thing. Ultimately, we all want to feel secure in ourselves. This is where a lot of these personality disorders come from, because somewhere early on, somebody made us feel insecure on a very deep level.
Your parents?
Yeah, it usually stems from childhood. So, as we discussed, and before we go to break, borderline, mainly this fear of abandonment coming from childhood. OCD, a feeling of being out of control. Where does that come from? You want to start looking at these things. And if you're listening right now and you've, dated somebody, or you are with somebody, or you yourself may be sitting here thinking, oh, maybe there's a reason why I am the way I am, this is a great time to listen in and give us a call and let us know, what has happened in your life. Give us some perspective that maybe we can help you gain some. Right,
and we're waiting. So anybody wants to call in, our number is 298-5487. And this is Dr. Gregory Jenkins on the Doc and Doc Show. And we're here with a doctoral student, Alicia Dukoff, and we'll be right back. Thank you.